Dr. Johnson was very kind to me this evening and said to me, "You have now lived 25 years, and you have employed them well." "Alas, sir," said I fear not. Do I know history? Do I know mathematics? Do I know law?" Johnson said, "Why, sir, though you may know no science so well as to be able to able to teach it, and no profession so well as to be able to follow it, your general mass of knowledge of books and men, readers, you very capable to make yourself master of any science, or fit yourself for any profession." I mentioned that a gay friend, this I believe we're talking 1700s use of that word meaning happy friend, and a later footnote tells us it's Wilkes. So I mentioned Boswell mentioned to Johnson, a gay friend had advised me against being a lawyer, because I should be excelled by plotting blockheads. Johnson said, "Why, sir, in the formulary and statutory part of law, a plotting blockhead may excel, but in the ingenious and rational part of it, a plotting blockhead can never excel." I think we should bring back blockhead. And look, my cover is... I'm just going to rip it off. Too bad. I don't know what I'm going to do with this book when I'm done with it. I'm going to have to just chuck it. I don't know if any lending library is going to want a copy of Johnson, let alone a decrepit copy of Johnson. It's too bad. Anyway, I guess I can use this as the bookmark now. I talked of the mode adopted by some to rise in the world by courting great men, and asked him whether he had ever submitted to it. So this is a little fishy, if I may interject, because he's basically sucking ass to Johnson by asking if he's heard of people sucking ass to older, great men like Johnson is to Boswell. But that's just my take. Johnson said, "Why, sir, I never was near enough to great men to court them. You may be prudently attached to great men and yet independent. You are not to do what you think wrong, and, sir, you are to calculate and not pay too dear for what you get. You must not give a shilling's worth of court for sixpence worth of gold." Of good, rather. Sorry, I'm a little off today. "But if you can get a shilling's worth of good for sixpence worth of court, you are a fool if you do not pay court." He said, "If convents should be allowed at all, they should only be retreats for persons unable to serve the publics, or who have served it. It is our first duty to serve society, and after we have done that, we may attend wholly to the salvation of our own souls. A youthful passion for abstracted devotion should not be encouraged." That's an interesting take. Ooh, got some whiskey in there today. Oh, strong stuff. I introduced the subject of second sight and other mysterious manifestations, the fulfillment of which, I suggested, might happen by chance. Johnson said, Sir, yes, sir, but they have happened so often that mankind have agreed to think them not fortuitous." I talked to him a great deal of what I had seen in Corsica and of my intention to publish an account of it. He encouraged me by saying, "You cannot go to the bottom of the subject, but all that you can tell us will be new to us. Give us as many anecdotes as you can." Our next meeting at the Mitre was on Saturday the 15th of February, when I presented to him my old and most intimate friend, the Reverend Mr. Temple, then of Cambridge. I having mentioned that I had passed some time with Rousseau in his wild retreat, and having quoted some remark made by Mr. Wilkes, with whom I had spent many pleasant hours in Italy, Johnson said, sarcastically, "It seems, sir, you have kept very good company abroad, Rousseau and Wilkes." Thinking enough to defend one at a time, I said nothing as to my gay friend, but it answered with a smile, "My dear sir, you don't call Rousseau bad company. Do you really think him a bad man?" Johnson said, "Sir, if you are talking jestingly of this, I don't talk with you. If you mean to be serious, I think him one of the worst of men. A rascal who ought to be hunted out of society, as he has been. 3 of 4 nations have expelled him, and it is a shame that he is protected in this country." Boswell, myself, said, "I don't deny, sir, but that his novel may, perhaps, do harm, but I cannot think his intention was bad." Johnson said, "Sir, that will not do. We cannot prove any man's intention to be bad. You may shoot a man through the head, and say you intended to miss him, but the judge will order you to be hanged. An alleged want of intention, when evil is committed, will not be allowed in a court of justice. Rousseau, sir, is a very bad man. I would sooner sign a sentence for his transportation than that of any felon who has gone from the Old Bailey these many years. Yes, I should like to have him work in the plantations." Wow. Boswell said, "Sir, do you think him a bad man as Voltaire?" Johnson said, "Why, sir, it is difficult to settle the proportion of iniquity between them." So is this? I guess this is Rousseau, the philosopher. I'm assuming, he's the. I don't remember. I'll have to look that up. I forget what he's famous. The savage. We're all savages, I think, is his thing. Noble savage, maybe. Is that him or is that Hobbes? Hobbes is Leviathan. Rousseau, I think, is similar to that, though. But it's been a while since I've taken a philosophy class, so. This violence seemed very strange to me, who had read many of Rousseau's animated writings with great pleasure and even edification. Had been much pleased with his society and was just come from the continent, where he was very generally admired. Nor can I yet allow that he deserves the very severe censure which Johnson pronounced upon him. His absurd preference of savage to civilized life, okay, so I was right, noble savage, and other singularities are proofs rather of a defect in his understanding than of a depravity in his heart, and then of any depravity in his heart. And notwithstanding the unfortunate opinion which many worthy men have expressed of his profession du feu et du victare Savognard. I don't know why when I try and do a French accent, I do an Italian accent. I apologize. I cannot help admiring it as the performance of a man full of sincere, reverential submission to divine mystery, though beset with perplexing doubts. A state of mind to be viewed with pity rather than with anger. On his favorite subject of subordination, Johnson said, "So far it is from being true that men are naturally equal, that no 2 people can be half an hour together, but one shall acquire an evident superiority over the other." Wow. I mention this advice given us by philosophers to console ourselves with distressed or embarrassed by thinking of those who are in a worse situation than ourselves. This, I observe, could not apply to all, for there must be some who have nobody worse than they are. Johnson said, "Why, to be sure, sir, there are, but they don't know it. There is no being so poor and so contemptible who does not think there is somebody still poorer and still more contemptible." As my stay in London at this time was very short, I had not many opportunities of being with Dr. Johnson, but I felt my veneration for him in no degree lessened by me having seen multorum hominum mors et urbes. Let's see if I can get this. Many different men of the city. I'm assuming that's what it is in Latin. Let's see the translation. Many cities and many men's manners. Okay, it's close. Horace, that's from Horace, is Ars Poetica. On the contrary, by having it in my power to compare him with many of the most celebrated persons of other countries, my admiration of his extraordinary mind was increased and confirmed. The roughness, indeed, which sometimes appeared in his manners was more striking to me now, and from my having been accustomed to the studied, smooth, complying habits of the continent. And I clearly recognized in him, not without respect for his honor, his honest, conscientious zeal, the same indignant and sarcastical mode of treating every attempt to unhinge or weaken good principles. One evening, when a young gentleman, this is Boswell, according to another footnote, he's talking about himself, teased him with a account of the infidelity of his servant, who, he said, would not believe the scriptures because he could not read them in the original tongues and be sure that they were not invented. "Why, foolish fellow," said Johnson, "has he any better authority for almost everything that he believes?" Boswell said, "Then the vulgar, sir, never can know they are right, but must submit themselves to be the learned." Johnson said, "To be sure, sir, the vulgar are the children of the state, and must be taught like children." Boswell said, "Then, sir, a poor Turk must be a Mahometan, just as a poor Englishman must be a Christian?" Johnson said, "Why, yes, sir, and what then? This now is such stuff as I used to talk to my mother, when I first began to think myself a clever fellow, and she ought to have whipped me for it." Another evening, Dr. Goldsmith and I called on him, with the hope of prevailing on him to sup with us at the Mitre. We found him indisposed, and resolved not to go abroad. "Come, then," said Goldsmith, "we will not go to the Mitre tonight, since we cannot have the big man with us." Johnson then called for a bottle of port, of which Goldsmith and I partook, while our friend, now a water drinker, sat by us. Ooh, well, there's no water in that tonight. Goldsmith said, "I think, Mr. Johnson, you don't go near the theaters now. You give yourself no more concern about a new play than if you had never had anything to do with the stage. Than as if you had nothing to do with the stage." Johnson said, "Why, sir, our tastes greatly alter. The lad does not care for the child's rattle, and the old man does not care for the young man's whore." Jeez. That's a good line. I gotta remember that one. Goldsmith said, "Nay, sir, but your muse was not a whore." Johnson said, "Sir, I do not think she was, but as we advance in the journey of life, we drop some of the things which have pleased us, whether it be that we are fatigued and don't choose to carry so many things any further, or that we find other things which we like better." Boswell said, "But, sir, why don't you give us something in some other way?" Goldsmith added, "Aye, sir, we have a claim upon you." Johnson said, "No, sir, I am not obliged to do any more. No man is obliged to do as much as he can do. A man is to have part of his life to himself. If a soldier has fought a good many campaigns, he is not to be blamed if he retires to ease and tranquility. A physician who has practiced long in a great city may be excused if he retires to a small town and takes less practice. Now, sir, the good I can do, my own conversation bears the same proportion to the good I can do in my own writings." Let me read that again. "Now, sir, the good I can do by my conversation bears the same proportion to the good I can do by my writings, that the practice of a physician retired to a small town does to his practice in a great city." Boswell answered, "But I wonder, sir, you have not more pleasure in writing than in not writing?" Johnson said, "Sir, you may wonder." He talked of making verses and observed, "The great difficulty is to know when you have made good ones. When composing, I have generally had them in my mind, perhaps 50 at a time, walking up and down in my room, and then I have written them down, and often, from laziness, have written only half lines. I have written 100 lines in a day. I remember I wrote 100 lines of The Vanity of Human Wishes in a day. Doctor," turning to Goldsmith, "I am not quite idle. I made one line the other day, but I made no more." Goldsmith said, "Let us hear it. We'll put a bad one to it." Johnson said, "No, sir, I have forgotten it." Such specimens of the easy and playful conversation of the great Dr. Samuel Johnson are, I think, to be prized, as exhibiting the little varieties of a mind so large and so powerful when objects of consequence required its exertions, and as giving us a minute knowledge of his character and modes of thinking. And now a letter. To Bennet Langton, Esquire, at Langton, near Spilsby, Lincolnshire. Dear Sir, when your friends have done that from your departure till now nothing has been heard of you. What your friends have done, that from your departure till now nothing has been heard of you, none of us are able to inform the rest. But as we are all neglected alike, no one thinks himself entitled to the privilege of complaint. I should have known nothing of you or of Langton from the time that dear Miss Langton left us, had not I met Mr. Simpson of Lincoln one day in the street, by whom I was informed that Mr. Langton, your mamma, and yourself had been all ill, but that you were all recovered. That sickness should suspend your correspondence I did not wonder, but hoped that it would be renewed at your recovery. Since you will not inform us where you are or how you live, I know not whether you desire to know anything of us. However, I will tell you that the club subsists, but we have the loss of Burke's company, since he has been engaged in public business, in which he has gained more reputation than perhaps any man at his appearance ever gained before. He made 2 speeches in the House for repealing the Stamp Act, which were publicly recommended by Mr. Pitt, and have filled the town with wonder. Burke is a great man by nature, and is expected soon to attain civil greatness. I am grown greater too, for I have maintained the newspapers these many weeks. And what is greater still, I have risen every morning since New Year's Day at about 8. When I was up, I have indeed done but little, yet it is no slight advancement to obtain for so many hours more the consciousness of being. That's good. Ooh, I gotta remember that one. I wish you were in my new study. I am now writing the first letter in it. I think it looks very pretty about me. Dyer is constant at the club. Hawkins is remiss. I am not over diligent. Dr. Nugent, Dr. Goldsmith, and Mr. Reynolds are very constant. Whatever that means. Mr. Lye is printing his Saxon and Gothic dictionary. All the club subscribes. You will pay my respects to all of Lincolnshire friends. All my Lincolnshire friends. I am, dear sir, most affectionately yours, March 9th, 1766, Sam Johnson, Johnson's Court, Fleet Street. Oh boy. Holy shit. Oh, this is the next page. It's one giant footnote. It's basically 2 pages of footnotes and a tiny bit of writing at the top. So, I was going to read the next letter, but to read the next letter, I would then have to read the next footnote, and I do not want to start that mountain today. I'd rather put that off till tomorrow. So, I guess I'll just end, which is fine. I can do that. Well, until next time, bye from Boswell.